Hi fellas, this is King Richard the Lionheart, often called Richard the Brave. He was the only one that had any capability to try and halt the Muslim savages, the invaders, the rapists, the slave masters who used to steal everybody's children. Here's how it expanded. In under 100 years it expanded from the Arabian Peninsula, slewed millions, and they were occupying Spain, pushing into southern France. They were only just stopped in southern France by a tribe of Germans, they called the Franks at the time. This is him wearing the red cross, the Christian cross, which all members had to wear to signify they were in God's army, in effect, in the army of Jesus Christ. Their cruelty remains the same today. We see with this rape plague all over Europe. They've been dealing in slaves, especially young virgin girls are worth a fortune, and these are the girls to go for usually in Britain today, often from the age of 10 years. We didn't do it on our own. We had a lot of help from the French, the Germans, as I say. The Sicilians provided crossbowmen, hundreds and hundreds of crossbowmen, which King Richard used to good effect. They outfought the Muslims at every step. They were just greedy gangsters, basically, used to looting villages, undefended villages. We didn't know what hit them when they came across Richard and his stubborn, determined defence. It actually stated at the Battle of Jaffa, our men were frightened of them. They stood there like dogs of war, quite prepared to die where they stood. They actually feared him. And at Jaffa, certainly, they refused to engage him. They were that scared of him, and scared of the fact that they believed Christ was behind them, he was helping them. Because they all feared Christianity. They knew their ideology was just based on a gangster, which it was.
But he did not anticipate the storm that would be unleashed when Richard of England heard the holy city was back in Muslim hands. The loss of Jerusalem was a disaster for Richard and the Christians in Europe. The Pope immediately issued a decree. Jerusalem was to be recaptured at all costs. In Christianity's darkest hour, Richard prepared to take on Saladin.
Richard would have heard the name Saladin many, many times. He would have known of Saladin's huge success as the leader of the Muslim world. The opportunity to match himself against someone so famous was an opportunity not to be missed. As soon as he heard the news that Saladin had taken Jerusalem, he at once, without a moment's thought, impetuously, knowing instinctively it was the right thing to do, took the cross.
Richard received a fabric cross that all crusaders pledged to wear until Jerusalem was back in Christian hands.
Richard would know that if he could lead a crusade that recaptured Jerusalem, he would go down in the annals of history as one of the greatest heroes of Christendom. This was his time.
When Richard, the greatest knight in Europe, became a crusader, thousands followed his example. Men prepared to leave their families. The crosses sewn onto their tunics, signifying that they were now a part of Christ's army, led by Richard. Men who had never left their villages would travel 2,000 miles to join him in the fight for Jerusalem. In return, the church would forgive them all their sins, a reward for which many were ready to die.
Crusaders embarking for the Holy Land must have felt an enormous mix of emotions. They were leaving their wives, their families. They themselves were going into the unknown. They were going into lands that they hadn't seen or experienced before. They knew from previous crusades you probably had a 1 in 3 chance of dying or not coming back. So great fear, and also a sense of moral right. They felt crusading was a good purpose.
In the summer of 1190, Richard, now King of England, set sail for the Holy Land. Richard had spent a fortune on provisions. It was said he would have been prepared to sell London to aid Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, Saladin realized instead of stopping the Holy War, his actions had inflamed it. Saladin's council was becoming increasingly concerned. They knew that Richard's army was sailing to join Franks released from Jerusalem, who had regrouped 100 miles north and were now besieging the Muslim port of Acre. Acre was the key port in the eastern Mediterranean. If the Christians could seize it, they would secure a bridgehead into the Holy Land. But if Saladin could break the siege, he could force the invaders back into the sea. When Saladin arrived at Acre, he ordered his army to surround the Christian besiegers. But the Crusaders were too deeply entrenched for him to win another dramatic victory. The siege was a stalemate. Now Saladin decided to starve the Christians into submission.